Commission meeting on Monday, June 15th, 2020. Ms. Lyles, if you would pray for us.
Dear Lord, we come to you today just thanking you, Lord, for letting us all be here. Thank you for the turnout, Lord. It's encouraging for us to see the community get involved. We just thank you for everything that you've done for us here in our county lately, Lord, for letting our community come together for the betterment of the ones who seem to be oppressed, Lord. And we just ask that you raise them up, help them, Lord, to feel the love from those that they maybe don't feel it from right now, Lord. Just help us all to reach out to one another, show each other love, show each other respect. Let us do that here tonight, Lord, as we take on the business of the county. Let us represent the people, not ourselves, not any special interests. Let us always look to the common good. Help us, Lord, to watch out for one another the way you ask us to love our neighbor, Lord. We just ask that you let us conduct ourselves in a way that would be pleasing to you through all of this, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Mr. Johnson, would you listen, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Number 4, public comment for non-agenda items. First is Ms. Abby Brower.
Right here?
Thank you.
Speak up here.
Yes, ma'am.
First time.
Please give your name.
My name is Abby Brower, and these are some of my neighbors back here, immediate neighbors. And I believe we have some representatives from the Cliffs, the Reserve, Kiwi with us today. We are here to stop the proposed gun range located at 453 East Stamp Creek Road near Nimmons Bridge Road in Salem. The seller is Steve McLeod of Seneca, and the buyers are Scott Durham of Ted's Barber Shop and son Matt, owner of the gun shop, Sure Shot. I believe they're both from Seneca also. That is no relation to the councilman. Please see your first page. This was the Facebook post of the owner's son describing the proposed gun range. This gun range would be open 365 days a year, including holidays, Sundays, sun up to sundown. Potentially could be from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's a long day of shooting with multiple groups of people. Membership only, pistol ranges, rifle ranges, 1,000-yard range. That's 10 football fields. This means high-powered, large-caliber rifles, guns, and ammo. These are huge bullets that can travel up to 5 miles, and the sound is deafening. I have a prototype. These aren't real bullets that we made. This is a regular .22. This is .50 caliber, just so you can see how big they are in comparison. Okay, there will be metal targets, skeet bays, campsites, fire pits, ATV trails. There's no ammo restrictions, and they can bring their own ammo. Unlimited guest invitations, this means large groups of people. Unlimited range time, that can mean all day long. In short, you can shoot as much as you want and as long as you want. Please turn to your next page, which is the danger zone. That means a projectile from a misfire on this range has the ability to travel up to 5 miles, which would include the neighboring properties, the Cliffs, the Reserve, and Kiwi. I'm sure they will not like this, and they have been notified. Inside the red circle danger zone, you will even see the town of Salem. Okay, the next page is our noise pollution perimeter. This is a 2-mile radius for noise, again including the Cliffs, Reserve, and Kiwi, and all residents in between, including us. In 1999, John Drosty and his son Tom Drosty set up a shooting range on Flat Shoals Road off Highway 11 near Burroughs Automotive. Due to the neighbors' complaints, which there will be many, Oconee County did shut down this range in 1999. We ask that you be ahead of the game and do not let this even get started. Also, and it would not be fair to the Durham family to invest any further. In summary, I have 3 main points. Our property values, most of us have been here 20 to 30 years. Our property values will plummet. No one wants to buy a home or a property next to a gun range. Number 2, the noise. The amount of noise will be deafening to our family, our fur friends, our pets, and our animals. There are 4 pre-existing horse farms currently next to this proposed range, as well as goats, chickens, dogs, and cats. Safety. This is paramount. We feel this gun range will create a very unsafe environment. We must be proactive now. Would you like this gun range in your backyard? Thank you for your time, and thank you for coming, neighbors.
Toby Childress.
Yes, ma'am. When I heard of what was going to
If you
happen,
don't mind, would you just state your name for the
my
record?
name is, if you want to call me Toby, fine, Octavia is fine too, whichever you prefer. But when I heard of what was going to proposed to be beside my property, for my property, here's a fence, there's a property. I have 6 horses, little dogs, little cats, and me. I cannot fathom the fact that there would be a gun range next to my property where I can hear it all day long. Would you like that? I am saying as plain as I can speak, please, if the man wants to buy the property, God bless him, let him buy the property. But please do not put a gun range next to my property. It will make my horses run like crazy. They could fire through a fence, break their legs, vet bill. I would have to pay for somebody to come and repair my fence. That's not pleasant thoughts. None of it is. So I am pleading with you guys and ladies, please, the man can buy, but please do not allow a gun range. Please do not allow it, for I'm there by myself, which I don't care, I'm there. But I just don't want anything like that next to my property. It would decrease the value of it, scare the heck out of my horses, and it shouldn't do good for me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Barnett?
I'm not gonna say too much about that. I've been to a gunfighter too.
If
Ain't
you-
no fun.
Mr. Barnett, make sure you tell us who you are, officially.
I'm Jerry Barnett. Y'all should know that by now.
It's for the record.
Same day in and day out. I'm seeing some things go on that disturb me greatly. Our government is supposed to protect our rights. I've got a copy of the Constitution back there that goes everywhere it goes. That's the role of government. I realize you are not elected. You're appointed. And I think that needs to change. If we could vote for you, I wouldn't guess how many of you would be left. I'm sure those that protect our private property rights would be left. So we saw evidence of that Tuesday. The silent majority sent a message. I hope everybody got it. We want people representing us that understand the rural community and our private property rights. Too much is invested here in life and sacrifice to let anybody intrude into our personal private lives. And I expect this gun fight's gonna go on for quite some time. But things usually work out And again, private property rights should have a little something to do with this. Because they certainly wouldn't want this guy that proposes a gun range telling them what they could do on their land. Yet they want to tell him what to do. And at some point, maybe just compensation would come into play. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Mr. Durham?
Good evening. I'm Matt Durham, the owner of Sure Shot Firearms, the one in the notes and everything that you guys had heard of. You know, this meeting got kind of thrown on me last minute. You know, I can say that I'm not as prepared as I would love to be for this. But with that being said, bringing up the points that, you know, all these nice people have brought up, you know, looking at it from an outside perspective, you know, I understand what it's like to have property. I understand what it's like to have, you know, things move in around you that you don't like and, you know, potentially ruin your property value or potentially, make your property value go up. There's nothing even happened at this property yet. I have no intentions of coming in and being a thorn in anybody's side. You know, I'm not the guy that's gonna come up there and bulldoze the whole place and create a 10-mile gun range so everybody can hear it from Oconee County. That's not the goal. The goal is I want land, and you may believe me, you guys may not, I have no idea, but truthfully, in all honesty, the reason why I bought that property was for me and my daughter to be able to ride four-wheelers on. You know, there's a ton of land there. Yes, I want to open a gun range. There's no secret about that. I believe it's, you know, pretty much out in the open. I would love to. It's been a dream of mine since I was, you know, opened a gun store 10 years ago. I've always wanted to. But the main goal is I want to have a piece of heaven just like everybody else. You know, I'm not going to have 400 and 500 people up here shooting bullets the size of cannons, you know, rockets through your back door. I mean, that's ridiculous. I have no intentions of doing that. I have no intentions of endangering anyone's livestock or anyone's, you know, health and safety of themselves at all. You know, when you build I mean, imagine the lawsuit implications for myself if that were to happen. I mean, I would think you would ask yourself, you know, would I not take those precautions seriously and do what's needed to make sure that does not happen? You know, this range is going to be a private, small group of people. I have not exactly figured out the number yet, but we're not talking in the hundreds, okay? You know, some of the things that I wrote down just for, you know, the hours.
We have a little bit of a time constraint. I don't have an egg timer, but I
Well,
don't.
how much longer do you want me?
I don't-
Can I go?
Okay, we gave her, okay.
Well, I'll try to speed it up. You know, I don't have any intention of coming in and causing major problems. I don't want to. I don't want to disturb Huey and, you know, the town of Salem, and that's not my goal. I never asked to be the center of this conversation either, but unfortunately I am. You know, I'm a good person. I want to preserve the area. I would love to preserve, you know, relationships with each one of you. That would be my goal. You know, but I've been portrayed as this, you know, somebody coming up there that's about to do something seriously dangerous and harmful to animals and human life. That's not my intentions at all. You know, the noise ordinance, I understand that can be the biggest danger of a gun range is noise. You know, we're not going to be shooting at nighttime. You know, I have every intention of observing Sunday mornings for church and when people go to bed in the evening. There's not going to be people there shooting that late at night, okay? I don't know the exact hours. I'm not going to say an exact time, but I'm also not going to have people there at 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, okay? I appreciate your time, I do. I wish I had some more time, but, you know, unfortunately, that's the law, and I understand it, and I appreciate you allowing me to come up here and speak.
Well, I'm sure there'll be more opportunities
Okay.
for both sides
Okay,
to speak,
no worries.
certainly.
Thank
Yes,
you guys
sir.
so
Yes,
much.
sir. Thank you. Mr. Barnes?
I feel like a fish out of water. I have nothing to do with the gun range. I'm Peter Barnes, and I'm the highly paid president of the Homeowners Association of Kiwi, 1, 2, and 3 Subdivision. I'm here concerned about development particularly along the corridor of Highway 130, particularly from about where the summit is, or if you like, from 123 up to the power plant. Most of the subdivisions are on the lake side of 130. They have very attractive entrances, they're not at all intrusive, and what we're concerned about is what's going to go on the other side of the highway. The daylight scared out of us in Kiwi 1, 2, and 3 when we thought we were going to get a storage unit put on the other side of the road from us, between us and Newry. So what we're concerned about is what is the long-range development plan and what is planned for the other side of the highway, in other words, the east side heading north towards Kiwi Key. I was surprised to find that there are 25 developments in that range of, now, I was only able to confirm from my own memory, I'm getting older, the memory's not as good as it used to be, 19 of them, but that's a lot of folks. Our property values in Kiwi 1, 2, and 3, which is one of the oldest and therefore some of the smaller homes, is something like $75 million. Now, I tried to understand my tax bill. If anybody here could explain it to me, I would be delighted, but how you got to the number I pay on my property tax. So I tried to use it as an estimate of what the taxes collected are for Kiwi 1, 2, and 3, and it must be somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. Now, there are 25 other subdivisions up the road, and some of those are much newer with much bigger homes. We have several homes in Kiwi 2, for example, that were torn down and lovely 1 million plus homes were built. I can't imagine what the total revenue is to the county, but we're putting in between $100,000 and $200,000. Put together, it has to be at least $500,000, and maybe more like a couple of million. So the main concern then and the reason I'm here is the development of that corridor. We looked into the possibility. I remember when I was much younger, and President Johnson was the president, and Lady Bird Johnson designated highways in the northern part of the country as, I forget, scenic highways, that was the name, and there were land trusts created to protect that land. Well, we found out it's really easy to do in South Carolina too, except all you get is a sign. You can get a sign that says you're a scenic highway, and that's it. I talked to a couple of realtors and they said one of the things that sells homes further north than us is as they drive up this Kiwi 1, 2, and 3 and woods on the other side, then they hit the dam, and there's that magnificent view of the mountains. And it says, they told me it sells a house further up the lake before they even get there. We don't want to lose that, and that's the reason I'm here, that we keep this scenic part of our state scenic, and that any development that goes in has very, very careful thought as to what you're putting there. A hog farm wouldn't be good. I hate to disappoint this young man, a gun range wouldn't be either, as we were very upset about the possibility of a storage unit. But that's basically my story for being here, and I would have brought you a written copy, but I didn't think it was needed, but I can send one to Mr. Chapman if you
That's
wish.
fine. It's on the record.
Okay. There are good examples of development in the state, if I could just wrap up.
Okay, just a second, real quickly.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And the place I can think of the best is Hilton Head. If you look at shopping centers, anything, there's a barrier between them and the road, the signs are all this high, even at McDonald's. And I think there are instances of careful planning that do not disrupt a community's property values and beauty of this lovely state we live in. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Markovich?
Good evening, y'all. I'm Tom Markovich, just in case you don't know me. I wanted to speak to two things. One is these ordinances that have to do, or not ordinance, but just draft on RV parks. I'm really trying to understand why we're trying to regulate these RV parks. There's nothing in state law at all about regulating recreational vehicles in RV parks. And some of the connectors and what we're trying to do here baffle me. One, we talked about the utility connections, and it has to be, done through building codes. Building codes has nothing to do with recreational vehicles, period. Recreational vehicles are vehicles. Building codes deals with dwellings, buildings, structures. Recreational vehicles aren't structures at all. There's no definition for a recreational vehicle in any of the codes, and not even in the property maintenance code. So I don't know, that's been used before, trying to work around and do things, and how this thing fits into land development and subdivision regulations, I haven't the foggiest idea. It's not a subdivided parcel. It's not, it's just somebody putting vehicles on their property. We don't have regulations saying you can't have more than 4 vehicles on your piece of property, but we're gonna tell somebody you can't have more than 4 RVs on your property. So I don't see where we start drawing lines on how many vehicles we can have on a piece of property. So I feel like we're trying to dance around an issue to get to something, but I'm not sure what we're trying to get to. I'm sure y'all figure it out, but it just seems like sometimes I think we're trying to over-regulate to the extent that I don't know where it's going. Which leads me to this whole issue of corridor planning. I think you're gonna dislike this intensely, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think it'd be easier to put up a sign that says closed for business at every entrance to Oconee County, and then you don't have to worry about corridor planning. Because from what I've read, what we want to do to buildings and corridors, oh my God, signs. Have you ever read so much about signs? I mean, please. Anyway, put up one sign, each entrance, closed for business, you're done. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markovich. I think I'll get an egg timer before next week.
I got it on my phone here, you're good.
All righty, I will start with a couple of comments on our minutes from the last time. I'm sorry, the English teacher came out again just for a second. On the second page, 6, the 4th line under number 6, Brian Ball for DHEC speaking, period. Mr. Bassey seconded and was approved 7-0. And then under number 8, A, the second line of the discussion, quarters are not a one-size-fits-all. Each quarter will have to be addressed separately. Anybody else have any corrections or changes? Yes, sir.
Same paragraph 8, go down to the 3rd line. Let's see, Mr. Smith would like to see Highway 188 and 183, including traffic nodes. So insert the word traffic in front of nodes, please.
Any other comments or corrections, changes? All right, can I get a motion, please, that these minutes be approved?
I make a motion.
Motion.
All right, Ms. Lyles, can I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, I'm sorry, I skipped Mr. Smith, I'm sorry. Commissioner member comment, yes, I did.
If I may, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Since it's been commissioner member comment, generally speaking, we don't always have such a broad turnout. Even though it's not listed on there, it says commission member comment, it could also be just comment in general, not just Mr. Smith. It's completely up to you. If anybody has any questions or comments regarding anything that was said.
Okay, all righty. Mr. Smith?
We are talking about comments now, not the internet. Is that correct, Gwen?
Well, we are talking, no, sir, we were number 5, I'm sorry, I skipped you, commission member comment on the internet.
You want me to go with the internet now?
Yes, sir, if you would.
Sure. absolutely.
And then we'll open it up if anybody else has any further comments.
Okay. After the last meeting, there seemed to be a lot of interest in the internet at the close of the meeting, and I said I would go before the county council and say a few words about the internet. And it's only 3 minutes long, but the last part of it I think is very important. And so I'd like to read it to you and be sure that you understand what I said so that there's no confusion. So if you'll bear with me, I'll go through it. My name is Mike Smith, and I'm coming before you tonight as a private citizen, not speaking or representing any organization or commission. I want to talk about the lack of availability of high-speed internet in the rural and some urban areas. I should also mention that I know about the controversy between the county and a major internet provider after the fiber optics cable was installed in the county. However, the virus has certainly brought into focus the importance of the internet to allow people to work from home, attend school, contact their doctor, provide entertainment, and generally communicate with the outside world. I doubt we'll fully return to the way we previously addressed these areas in our life. We should acknowledge that there's a direct relationship between population density and the investment internet companies make in the needed infrastructure. They simply want a return on their infrastructure investment. To encourage these companies to make an investment, the federal government has programs to encourage their investment. So let me suggest 2 steps to improve internet availability. First, the county needs to be knowledgeable of the FCC's Universal Service Fund, which is an umbrella name for several individual government programs. To help you navigate the labyrinth of these federal programs, you might consider asking for assistance from Mr. Duncan. However, an excellent overview of these programs is found in a publication titled Demand for Broadband in Rural Areas, Implications for Universal Service. It's about 30 pages long and was prepared by the Congressional Research Service. It said that federal subsidies underwritten by taxpayer funds and long-distance telephone subscriber fees have injected billions of dollars into rural broadband markets over the past decade, mostly on the supply side in the form of grants, loans, and direct support to broadband providers. However, even in the subsidized markets, broadband infrastructure build-out ultimately rests on business decisions made in the private sector. Once the county becomes knowledgeable of the FCC's programs and researches other counties where a program has been successful, the next step would be to invite the internet providers to discuss with the county council their future plans for providing high-speed internet service to the county. The internet providers would be more accommodating and cooperative if they know you're knowledgeable of the FCC's programs and have discussed with other counties how they have succeeded. True availability of the high-speed internet should be a top priority for the county and should start with direction from you, the county council. I then went on and talked to the one-tone manager, and after I said that to the county council, all of us did. We got this wonderful summation from Adam about the internet and how it has the history of it and where we are today. I went down and talked to the one-tone manager, and he showed me his schematic of the fiber optics network and where it is and where it isn't, and went into the costs of ditching and boring underneath driveways, etc. And it all comes down to population density. But the technology is changing. We're moving from in-ground to above-ground internet service, and if any of you are rocket enthusiasts, Elon Musk sent up another 55 satellites just this last weekend to help cover his plan for the internet. So you're not only getting it in the ground, the technology is changing above the ground, but we're now getting it possibility, or we will get it eventually from satellites. I know what I get for internet service. It ain't great. And I don't know I listened, when I went through the comp plan, listened to the people in the rural areas talk, and it's got to be a real burden if you're trying to get schoolwork done. So I hope that maybe we can get some momentum from the county council to move forward on this. Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your research there with that.
It was a lot of fun reading that 30 pages of government.
And I think we've asked, right, for them to maybe come back and talk to us as well as Blue Ridge and some other folks, just, or have a summation of where we are and what the hope is or plan is for the future.
I've reached out to Blue Ridge, but there's a lot of things going on at the moment. I haven't,
Right.
not any.
That, I know we've got some folks that are getting ready to get us some information, hopefully very soon, so. All right, item 7, discussion of new and old business. Mr. Root.
Do you have other
I'm sorry.
council member
Yes, ma'am.
comments?
Are we allowed to ask questions of anyone that spoke?
If you would like to, we have a moment here for commission member comments, so, I guess it'll be okay as long as we limit it to, not a long discussion or, yelling session.
If I may, if we're gonna open it up for one person, we've gotta open it up for every other person as well. Not against that, I just wanna put it out there that if we're gonna,
What do you mean?
if we start a back and forth conversation with the community as they're here, it would just only be fair to anyone who else wanted to ask a question during the course of that. So like if Mr. Markovich asked a question, then if everyone else raised their hand, I feel it would be appropriate to answer everyone else, if that's what you.
No, I'm saying, can we as commission members ask a question?
Oh, it's the chair's discretion.
If you don't want me to, just tell me.
Well, my question, is it relevant to something we're actually trying to act on tonight, or is it
It's
something
only
that's gonna
relevant to
need
what they brought up tonight.
further discussion in the future regarding something that was in public
As long as
comments?
we're not making a decision on anything that was actually brought by the community tonight, then I can wait.
I don't think any of that was brought up tonight was on the thing, and I think there's a lot of further information that we'll be getting together.
Okay.
Does that work? Any other comments or, not questions? All right, now, Mr. Root?
Yes, ma'am. So the old new business, Adam, did you send them a copy of the email? So y'all got a copy of the email I sent out to all the chairpersons and the staff liaisons. County council has done away with, taken off of the agenda as recurring items, old and new business, and we propose that for all council or all commissions and boards to do the same. I know that was brought up to you all last meeting, I think. I felt the thud of that discussion from my home. That y'all didn't want anything to do with that, so I wanted to give it another effort. The reason, and I think tonight is a good example, with old new, for a private corporation having annual meetings, old new business, which is standard fare for deliberative assembly, is fine. For a deliberative public body like you all, it has always been something that caused me heartburn because it's contrary to the Freedom of Information Act. You all could bring up a new item for discussion, and it leaves open that door to take action on it. Tonight would be a good example. Folks didn't show up for this, but one of you all knew about the prospective firing range and decided, hey, I want to talk about the gun range that they're wanting to put in Salem. Let's start discussing that. These folks who are very interested from both sides wouldn't have any advance notice of that item for discussion. Old and new business as placeholders leaves that opportunity to happen, whereas the purpose of FOIA is transparency. Best way to get transparency is not only having records of meetings as after they've taken place and giving notice of meetings that are going to happen, but being very specific on the agendas as to what is going to be discussed during that meeting. You can't always cover everything. That's why you have council member or commission member, in your instance, comments. But to the extent that you can get rid of old and new business, and you all, if you have something to discuss like Mr. Smith did, relay that to the chairperson in advance, and it can be on the agenda, so then everyone in the public knows about it in advance, and if it's a matter of interest to them, they'll show up, as opposed to something like, well, I'll just wait and I can bring that up in old business or new business or something. It's problematic from a Freedom of Information Act standpoint. That's the only reason of wanting to get those removed. It's nothing nefarious or trying to quiet anybody. You all can get items on the agenda through Adam to the chair, directly to the chair, and you can bring up matters for comment during the commissioner comments. So I just wanted to make sure the reasoning was clear on why we're making that move to get rid of the old and new business.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a way of guaranteeing that anything a commission member brings up gets on the agenda?
It would go through the chair.
See, that's the problem, is if we have, I'm not Ms. McPhail, but this, I mean, if this is gonna be a going forward thing, if we have a chairperson that has an agenda and does not like what we're bringing up, they don't have to put it on there. So our voice is never heard unless we have that chance to bring it up during new business.
You have the chance during council or commissioner comments to bring up a matter, and if it's not, say you, just in an example, Ms. McPhail's not the chairperson next year, you have a different chair. Contact that chairperson and say, I would like to discuss ABC during the next commission meeting, and it's not put on the agenda. So essentially, that chairperson has violated their position by having some sort of super vote, by saying no to whatever you're wanting to discuss. So the chairperson doesn't enjoy that type of vote. So the chairperson really has to do that. They're subject to removal. I think that the means to do that may not be as quick as one would want when they want something on the agenda, but they are. They wouldn't be following the rules that really govern the procedure for them as a chairperson. So, yeah, they ultimately compile the agenda with the staff liaison, but they're supposed to reflect what you all want on the agenda, and what you all want on the agenda is supposed to reflect your areas that you've been appointed to represent. So, yes, that's the way it's supposed to operate. I understand that it could be the case that chairpersons do not want to put on the agenda something that some other commissioner wants on there, but there's a means to handle that. It's after the fact. There's the only way you can do it. I understand that. But were they allowed to do otherwise, they would be exercising a super vote, a veto type vote, before anyone had a chance to discuss it. That would be unlawful.
All right. Mr. Chapman came up with a form that our commissioners could use to submit a request for an item to be put on the agenda. Would that also that would become a legal record, right? If a commissioner asked for something and it was submitted to staff or to me, or to the chairman, then that would become a legal record, and then therefore it would be subject to oversight by a number of people.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's a good means. There are a lot of other jurisdictions that do it that way. Mm-hmm. Even amendments with some other jurisdictions that maybe are further along. If a council member say, I'm going to make a motion to amend this ordinance, they will submit that amendment before the meeting. So members of the public will know, hey, this ordinance even is going to be amended. We're not looking for that kind of specificity, but with a record like that, yeah, it would be a public record. If there's a legal request or something like that, it could be redacted off of there, something that's excluded from the public eye by FOIA. But that's a good way to do it. I like.
And I was thinking, if you added to the agenda with staff's whatever, but at the same time, if, for example, we had like all of you wanted 5 things added to the agenda, and the chairman says, "Oh no, we'll be here till 11:30." Would it be possible then to say scheduled for X due to long? I mean, would that be sufficient to make sure that it's staying in the public eye? But if there are already 3 or 4 requests, the 4th one might be passed over to the next meeting.
Right, and I think you would develop a flow with that, and the chairperson's tenure as chair would be that kind, and that's what the chairperson's not supposed to be. Everyone thinks of a chair as having a great power, as you probably figured out by now. It's really more of an onerous duty than anything else of having a power, but that position is one to coordinate more than anything, more than say this is what we're gonna do. Is to coordinate everybody's voice so it's heard in an orderly way, and most importantly for us and public entities is that everyone out there knows what's going to be discussed in advance as best we can.
Any other comments?
Well, if it gives Mr. Root heartburn over this old and new, then it should probably give us pause as well. That said, it is interesting that we're saying we're not discussing new business or bringing up new business because it doesn't allow the public at large to have time to come and listen and this and that. And that putting it under an agenda does give someone that's interested in that particular subject to, in fact, come to the meeting. It seems like we could, however, have passed something that said we won't be discussing or voting on anything under new agenda, but it then gives the public notice 2 shots instead of 1 shot to see what the agenda is. If you bring up a subject that, hey, I would like to talk about this at a future meeting, that could be put on the agenda at some future point, I'd like it discussed, and it be end of subject at that point. At least it gives the public notice at that meeting, ooh, I need to show up 2 meetings from now because there is gonna be something discussed, or I need to start checking the agendas regularly because of what was brought up under new business.
Well, that was kind of how, I'm sorry,
No, no,
that
no.
was kind of how we looked at the commission member comment. And that was why tonight I asked for tonight's agenda, I asked Mr. Chapman to put Mr. Smith's comments about the internet and put on there what he was going to be speaking about specifically, because that gave anybody who saw the agenda the opportunity to see what he was going to comment on. Obviously, there will be other comments, but we did not want it to be an action item. We simply wanted it to be, to know that it was.
So based on that, all we've done is change the name from new to commission comments.
Well,
Unless
but
we also
under-
say something that says we're not gonna discuss these items or vote on them.
Well, under comment, that, to me, and that's illegal, if it's under comment only, then it's not an action item on the agenda, therefore we cannot take action
Okay.
on it.
Yeah,
Correct?
it's
As long as that's the caveat to being able to get information out to the public in advance of even the agenda item.
So Adam in the position here, or me with council, I'm not gonna jump up there in between 2 council members who may be going at it, but do my very best to make council member comments, commission member comments, a monologue. It's a unilateral, one direction thing. Here's a comment, as opposed to commission discussion on a matter. So you have a comment, Mr. Smith had a comment, this is something I thought about within the last 24 hours, so it's not on the agenda. I'm gonna make a comment about firing ranges. Can we have this on the next agenda? And so then it ends up on the next agenda. It's not discussed, there's no action taken. But that way, in addition to being able to get it on the agenda beforehand, you can bring it up during the meeting. But it's not a matter that's discussed, there's no action that's taken on it. It's a comment from a commission member.
Okay, I have a scenario. What happened in the council meeting where the paper situation was brought up? Was that on the agenda? Where they voted to, I know it was a budget amendment, so it was kind of different, but saying the budget wasn't being handled at that time, and that was a situation that needed to be addressed right then. So how would, if we don't have a chance for new business and old business, how would that have happened had that not been a budget meeting?
So this is what you're right, it was a budget meeting, advertising was a section within the budget, so it was fair game to be acted on. If you have something that you have to act on, and it comes up within that 24-hour period, all right, so nothing can be added to the agenda within 24 hours of the meeting. So y'all can add to it all you want, but come Sunday, nothing more until tonight. And once a meeting is opened up, you can add an item. If you have a supermajority, and if it's something that you're gonna take action on, there's some emergency or exigent circumstance. So in that case, in the council case, there was an exigent emergency circumstance, something had blown up. If the budget wasn't something that opened that door for it, action could still have been taken on. They would have made a motion to amend the agenda to include it, action that would have been taken on it, and it would have spelled out the emergency circumstance, and it would have been lawful under FOIA.
Okay, so if some big thing happened that we needed to act on, we have the means to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions or comments? So everyone feels comfortable with the fact that we have an opportunity to speak and share our ideas under commission member comment. But those are comments only. We have the understanding that if in the event of an emergency, we can have either a supermajority or an emergency situation that should be handled
Supermajority to discuss.
to discuss.
If you're gonna take action on it, then it's a supermajority and an emergency or some extraordinary exigent circumstance.
Okay.
Meaning, we gotta do something about it now before the next meeting.
Okay. So we do have a manner to act on something. We would probably have to call him in again for just guidance on procedures, but, and then we can move forward with removing, the new business and old business from our agenda as well.
But we're gonna
Everybody clear
do
with
the
that, so?
form so that nothing can get swept under the rug.
The form
It's
is
not that I don't trust you, Ms. McPhail. I don't trust the system.
Well, we voted on the form, right, at the last one? Or did we not?
I just put out the form there.
You put out a form. Did we not vote to accept it?
No, because I did it after the fact. And also, if you can't fill out the form because it's a PDF, you can always just email it in. There's whatever that record is, just give me the same information, and I just email it. Every email that comes in and out of my email box is there forever-ish. So, I mean, there'll be a record of it. I mean, phone call's great, but email, form.
Do we need to put that form in as part of our motion? So that it is a guarantee that there's a way to have a public record of what recommendations have been made?
If there's no form like ready right now, I think a motion
It's ready, I think.
do you have the form ready? All right, so a motion to remove old and new business from the agenda as standing items, to include a form for inclusion of new matters to the agenda as discussed. And so if Adam comes up with a form that's a dud, y'all can work that out, but it's pretty basic. It just say, hey, I want this on the agenda, so it's pretty much a couple of blanks. Motion.
Would anybody like to rephrase
I'll make that
as a
motion
motion?
that the attorney just stated.
So we have a motion on the table that says that we will remove old and new business with the understanding that there will be a form for submission of ideas from the commission besides the chairman to be added to the agenda. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Y'all, if it doesn't work out, you can find me.
We're not allowed in the building, sir.
That's right, yeah. And I'll stay away from here, so.
All right, the next item on the agenda is our draft recreational vehicle ordinance. Mr. Chapman.
Sure. Sorry. Mr. Smith had it.
I would like to discuss changing that very first line, intent, and see if we can't come up with a line or sentence that perhaps will address this, maybe what our objective is and whether or not we've achieved it. Adam, can you put this up on the screen, please? Let me read it out to you. You ready? Jeepers. I didn't know it was going to be that hard. You ready? Your fingers all warmed up. Okay. To provide a safe, clean, and sanitary environment for the occupants of recreation vehicle parks in Oconee County, period.
Sanitary
I
what?
think that captures our objective.
Oxford comma, my choice.
I don't know if we're into commas yet, but
I think we're good on
make,
commas.
I would like to make a motion that we change our intent to what we have in front of us here.
And you're saying in place of that sentence, it says manage growth?
Yes, manage the growth of recreational parks and their impact. I think this addresses our objective as to what we were trying to do, to provide a clean, safe, sanitary environment.
We certainly need a sentence, so that's a step in the right direction. And I think if I remember right, when we talked about all of this in the meeting, is that not what we said? We didn't say anything about managing the growth. What we said was we wanted to make sure that they were safe and clean and sanitary, basically. So I think we've got a good start on that first change.
I'll second that. I think you made a motion, right?
Any discussion?
Well, my discussion was, go ahead. Me? I just went back to what we were trying to accomplish when we first started this, and I wanted to be sure that we captured that objective. And I think that this did it. I figured it out about 3 in the morning.
Any further discussion?
Who's gonna be monitoring and enforcing?
Mr. Chapman, I believe.
So if I may, there's a motion and a second on the table just for this one line.
Okay.
If we could get through that, just this one motion vote for just for the intent portion, and then, just so we don't get it all, have to rework it, if that's okay with y'all. Or we can discuss that though now if you'd like to.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to change the wording of the intent of this ordinance to provide a safe, clean, and sanitary environment for the occupants of RV parks in Oconee County. All right, all in favor?
I'm one.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay,
So to answer your
Now-
question, Mr. Graham, I'm sorry.
Now we need to actually just discuss this as a whole.
Yeah.
okay, open it up for discussion. We have a group of definitions.
Andy's question now.
Andy, yes, sir?
Who's going to monitor and enforce this regulation?
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir?
What I provided to you all was a draft outline. I knew that we were gonna get into it, and I didn't want to send it up to the attorney first to have them, finalize it, and then us come and pick at it or add to it. So, the violations and enforcement portion will just take boilerplate, basically, I imagine, off the rest of it, but it would fall under my office, the planning office, as far as that goes, I imagine.
Your office is gonna routinely go around to all these trailer park or RV parks and look at conditions and then write them tickets, or how's it gonna work?
I haven't written any sort of summonses or brought anyone before court as part of our zoning ordinance. I'll certainly discuss it more with Mr. Root, but I mean, it's a possibility, yeah, but just similar to any of our other ordinances that fall under different wheelhouses, it can certainly be enforced.
Is that gonna require additional personnel?
I don't believe so, since we're essentially under the exemptions, you're looking at going forward, not going in arrears. But it could certainly, I mean, the county's growing, so I mean, anything's certainly possible in some time.
I think it's kind of like everything. They don't police all the ordinances in the county, but when somebody complains, they certainly have to go out, right, and act on them if you receive multiple complaints.
I do my best to police all of it as much as is feasible, but yeah, I mean, a lot of our enforcement issues are complaint driven, for sure.
But ordinances aren't typically written with the intent of hiring somebody to police that ordinance.
No.
We are a county entity creating documents that, should there be complaint, we have something to reference. And if someone's wanting to create something, a guide with which to work through.
So basically, what I gather is that this is an outline of an ordinance, but it is not completed in the ordinance. Do we need to go through it piece by piece?
So what I'm hoping tonight to
Say
be
yes or
done
no?
is that it's 4 pages long roughly. If we go through it as much similar to the way we did the comprehensive plan, just look at it section by section. If you all have any heartburn about any one portion of it, let's address it there. And then as we address it, that will kind of form the final ordinance. So once we go through this tonight, in the next couple minutes here, then after that, I'll get with Mr. Root and we'll turn it into a final format, which will have all the same content. I'll have a little bit of legalese at the top, legalese at the bottom, and then you all get to see it again, obviously. And then at that point, you can decide whether it's sent to council or not.
So you want us, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, so with the review process, that's pretty simple and that just about anybody would have access to that. They wouldn't have to, spend money on surveys or anything above and beyond what's available.
Right, so this doesn't say it has to be a survey, but certain things will inherently require, like if there's a major floodplain on that, I'm gonna ask for elevation certificates kind of thing. If they're gonna propose a accessory structure on it or something of that nature. DHEC will certainly require certain things, not necessarily engineer drawings, but if they're gonna do a a dump station. DHEC's gonna require certain thresholds, as we heard from Mr. Ball at the last meeting. So there are certain things that, I mean, you could draw this out. I'm happy to take scale drawings of these that you don't have to go hire an engineer for. And I think that was the intent of you all saying that you didn't want to put out the small mom and pop style. So going back to the first page, that major and minor is looking at them slightly differently. That's why I highlighted them.
With these,
Any other comments or questions?
well, I mean, do we start with definitions and then just start on through exemptions and do it that way? Is that the easiest way for us to do it?
I think that could certainly be a way to do it, yes, sir.
Does anybody have a problem with any of the definitions? I mean, that's, for me, I've read through it. I didn't have any questions at all until we get over to some of the back part. Anybody have any questions or comments on definitions?
No.
I'm good with that.
Are we good with that? All right.
Yeah.
Sir? We're good? All right. Exemptions? Everybody okay with exempting dealers and manufacturers of RVs, since they may have a whole bunch of them sitting around? They don't need to follow all this. Existing RV parks. They're grandfathered in.
But we don't have, they're not listed anyway, right? So how are we gonna know who is grandfathered in and who is not grandfathered in?
That's a great question. Our tax assessor has a list of some of them, which I have, but it usually comes down to, and not to skip too far ahead, but if I may address what Mr. Markovich said regarding utilities. All utility connections shall adhere to adopted building code standards. And I'll just need to write that better, because the intent is, like, when you pull an RV into an RV park, you could run a generator, which a lot of them do have generators. A lot of times you take that RV and you plug it into something. Something that you plug it into is often referred to as a pedestal, usually on a 4x4 or 6x6, it's sunk into the ground, it's got an outlet, it's GFC, ground faulted, weatherproof. Those are building code standards, which those pedestals are put in there. You can't just go and like climb a pole and, hot wire in. So that was the intent of writing all utility connections. Oftentimes, when you have to pull those little utility pole meter, depending on where it is, they have to get another electric permit for that. And that's where we would know about it, is through that mechanism, is them putting in temp poles or putting in power for an RV.
So if they already have power on the place, but they don't necessarily have RVs there, they can pull RVs in and they're still not gonna be under
If
this
they don't hook
code.
them up to utilities or creating sort of correct, if somebody just has a field out there and they roll 50 RVs on there for the weekend, I'll hear about it after the fact for sure. But looking at the majority of RV park owners who are creating a business to make money, they're gonna supply power, they're gonna supply sewage hookups, freshwater hookups, things of that nature. And so that's kind of what we're kind of looking at and providing some guidance for.
Well, remember, it wasn't our intent to discourage some sort of weekend concert where there's some folks camping out at a site in the field. Our objective was to stop some of the unsafe living environments where that RV may or may not run, may or may not have wheels, but it has become a place of living for however many of those units that are there. And the safety issue that comes with it with regard to DHEC, as we heard from the DHEC attendant, that it is a problem. They don't manage it that way, and they don't have any teeth behind something because it's something that's overlooked. And so in creating something, it's either for the guy who's trying to create a reputable business as an RV, under major RV parks, I'm guessing, or the person who needs to make some extra money when Duke is in town and needs a place for campers to stay. It's fine. You just have to make sure that you're not running extension cords out of the back door of your house to do it, and that you're creating a sanitary condition. for sewage disposal or whatever.
Did we specify that there has to be, we didn't make it to where they have to have a separate utility thing for each
No.
one, did we?
Separate utility.
Like a separate
meter?
meter or anything for each one, or?
I would default on that to the provider. If for utilities, let's say water, so let's say they were gonna hook up to Walhalla Water. If Walhalla Water says you gotta have a meter for every single hookup, then I would default to Walhalla Water.
But we're not saying that they have, like, they can put 1 meter in and run 4 campers off of it, or up to 10 campers if it allows.
Yeah, and I didn't even address, since we don't provide water and it doesn't fall, we just require water for certain things. So I can certainly clarify that, you know, the freshwater hookups, if provided, shall follow all rules and regulations of that water provider or DHEC or something.
You know, I don't want extra restrictions. I'm just trying to make sure I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I dropped wastewater, I did not talk to freshwater, utilities is what I looked at, so, I'm not 100% sure what our international building code says about that, I doubt if anything. I think the water provider specifies what has to go on there. I'll look into that, but I'll see if there's any, provisions regarding freshwater from providers. But oftentimes they provide like backflow preventers, things of that nature. But that's not from us, that's from the water provider. And if you have a well, I guess it's on your own, so that's
With both water and power, some of these places are gonna want to meter individuals, and some of them are just gonna have a estimated dollar amount that if you got a 240-volt plug, it's gonna cost this many dollars a week.
Yeah, a master meter, right?
Yeah. So,
But you're leaving that option up to the homeowner, the landowner.
Not addressing that at
Okay.
all, because it falls outside of our it falls outside my wheelhouse, it's not even in here.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't need to add any of that
But
stuff.
if you'd like for me to add something not that encourages, but that clarifies it. So you have a question, that's the same question that if you were gonna start an RV park on your property, you would come and ask that question, because it's not addressed in here. It doesn't say that it's allowed. For instance, wastewater, we don't have to put that on there. It's put on there to provide a framework. So if you prefer us to put something on there, we can certainly do that. Or if you're okay with that as it is, we can leave that too.
If it's okay with Chairman, I'd like to let that gentleman speak in the back, if he'll keep it short,
Yes, sir.
sweet.
No, but I was gonna say, I've been looking.
Just come on up and speak your name, please, sir. Yes, sir.
All I was gonna say, listen, y'all,
We need your name, please, sir, if you don't mind.
Benny Luce, Salem, South Carolina, I got an RV park,
Oh, sure.
but I didn't know this was gonna be, I come out here for just listening. But DHEC covers everything y'all talked about. You gotta have a sewer, so many can be on it, and that's it. You got your water, site down, Salem says how many you have on it. So y'all writing in a bunch of stuff that really don't need to be wrote in. Really getting in a lot of stuff really don't need it. We don't need to help. So that's my comment.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Cause y'all was trying to, looks like to me, kind of overrule people like us.
I do have a question for the gentleman. So we are running into situations where we are having pop-up RV parks that are really not RV parks. Some guy's backyard, RV campers have rolled in, and sewage is.
Well, okay, I understand that.
It's just
But
kind of
if you go
rolling.
through DHEC, you know, we're all legal. People
So
have got,
how do you handle the ones that aren't?
I don't know.
And that's really what we're trying to do.
You throwing me in there with them, sounds like.
What's that?
You kind of throwing me in with people that's not legal.
Well, we definitely don't
You
want
gonna
to
drive around,
penalize.
or you gonna supply more people to come lock me up? My Plugs messed up or what? I heard you say about policing. Is that true?
Oh, no, I think he just meant oversight, just
Well,
checking.
oversight.
It's policing, it's just,
You ride through this, and if you don't like me, he's gonna come say, look, you don't look good, yours is 20 years old, so you're gonna have me locked up, or?
policing is not the same as the sheriff's office. It's not the same as, you police your campground to make sure it's clean, right?
I do.
So that's what the reference was to policing.
Okay. But I mean, but you gonna be riding through this at will, tell me what to do, is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, sir,
Tell
that's
Sam?
what we're trying not to do. We're trying to make sure that if,
Rules on board there.
if someone said, if we get a complaint from the county
Right.
that someone has, let's say that they have one septic tank, but they have now grown up to the point that they have 10 RVs that are connected to it and there's sewage running out. Right, the DHEC man spoke to us in the meeting and said they may have rules against that, but they do not have a way to enforce it, or oftentimes don't
Well-
enforce it. So
That's not correct. When it's on top of the ground, they can
Okay.
intervene.
well, he did say when it was on top, but you don't always know that.
Well, Brian Balls, and when I done mine, that's been 20 years ago, when you enforce them, and when you talk about doing that, you get 6 on a 6, or, you know, on one, on that. I got more gravel in the ground I had on my campground. That's how much, I made me double gravel, 48 inches, 500 foot on one, 500 foot on the other one.
And I think the
And I
other
don't
thing,
think it's ever reached the end of it yet.
the other thing I think that we're also looking at is the fact that you were honest enough to go with DHEC to ask for
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And not everybody does that, and
I
so
understand.
unfortunately, we're charged with dealing with the people that don't always have the integrity to do things the right way.
Well,
So-
you know, I'm not throwing off on it or nothing, but when you get that many regulations, I don't know if it's counting to me or these other guys, I know try to do the right thing, so.
Can
Yes,
I
sir.
ask you a
Thank you.
question? Can you look at these as a responsible campground owner and tell us this is stuff that you already do anyway, or?
I already got, I try to upgrade, I'm upgrading my electrical a little bit, I can't have, when I put it in, there ain't nobody have pull outs. There ain't nobody have nothing over 30 amps. Now everybody's got 50s, 80s, you know, hell, it's like building a house in there. But I can't use them, I can't do all them guys, I got a certain amount of 50s I do, a certain amount of 30s. So that's what you gotta do is, you know, they can't overuse, it's gonna blow a fuse. That's pretty much, you know, that part. As far as putting too many on the septic tank, it'll tell on you in a little while.
That was kind of our intent, is just I'll tell you up front, I am a property rights individual. But we have some people that won't go the right way, and they just pull them up on their property. There's no septic system. We had an instance of this where they were just tons of people camping out, and there was no septic system there, and it was affecting the neighbors. We're trying to put as few of regulations as possible to keep that from happening, but not affect people like you who are trying to do the right thing.
Well, I took the police and it's a little wrong, I guess.
Well, I enforcement,
Yeah.
I should say, or things of that nature, no, just police, the same way you police your campground, it's just the police powers of the government, it's not meant to be.
But I mean, like most people I know does rent, you know, for you to do whatever. They got them hooked on either on their septic tank, they don't let them run out. And I could probably name some people.
But no, we don't want to go there. And we don't want to, but we,
Well, I'm not saying I'm going to, I'm just saying I
Right.
could probably name some people that do let them, I mean, I'm not in for that.
that's all, like I said,
That's
all we're
basically-
trying to do
right.
is make sure that we regulate the people that don't do things the right way. Because unfortunately, as we get more and more people in our county, there's going to be more and more of those people that want to make money on the side and maybe not necessarily do the right thing every time. And we want to make sure that that the county, not Mr. Chapman, but that the county in fact has teeth to make sure that things are being done the right way.
Y'all not voting on this tonight, I mean, I'd like to get a copy of what you're gonna do.
No, we're just approving the general
Mr.
direction
Michelle?
of it.
May
Yes, sir.
I also say, in addition to the policing side of it, we're also trying to provide a guidebook for somebody who says, I want to start an RV park, and doesn't necessarily know the direction to go. If they're going to build a house, they're going to go to building codes and say, I'm going to build a house, I need to follow certain guidelines. What are those? We're trying to provide something similar from an RV standpoint as well.
Right, and we're also trying to make sure that this, if it needs to be a place where some people who couldn't afford a house can find a place to live, then they have that opportunity, but they're not gonna be taken advantage of.
Right.
We would love it if you would look over that and come back and
I'll
say,
come back.
these
We
are some
don't do
things
that.
that are,
I was
say,
gonna
these are
say,
important.
you
I
can
come
talk
out
to
for
Mr.
something else, I just
Chapman.
gotta listen.
Well, we appreciate you coming out for being here.
I'll come back, I'll look it over.
Okay,
We need input of the business owners who are doing this the right way, because we don't want to mess with you. And we don't want to stop somebody
Okay, on
that
water.
wants to do one.
As far as water goes, I was talking about that, if you you can't put the two, anything on a well. Y'all knew that, right?
Right.
Say that
Well,
again?
You can't put over two, unless your son, say your son or your daughter moved inside, you can't have but two people on a well legally.
Yeah.
That'd be heck groups.
All right,
In a
yeah,
campground, you have to have an engineering firm to come out and, monitor your water, and it's gotta be the heck well. So therefore, that limits, a lot of your water system. I don't know how many people can be on it, cause I didn't wanna go that route, that's.
Depends on the water service.
all right. And if it's okay with you, if you don't mind, if you'll talk with Mr. Chapman, then he will, as he's drawing this up, anything that you can suggest or ideas, share them with him.
I can get
and-
Randy, 2 or 3
Yeah.
like on Highway 11, Randy Jones,
That would
he's got a
be-
nice one. And they sell
That would
it.
be great, yes, sir. And then keep an eye on these, so that you know when it's coming up.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay?
Thank
Thank
y'all
you,
for
sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
Thank you,
input. All right, guys, any other questions from council members? Or commission members, excuse me. We sure don't want to be councilmen.
Setbacks, we're just talking the original
Yeah, just what's
setbacks.
within the zone.
Like, not like between campers or anything,
Not at-
just,
What's in the zoning ordinance
Okay.
already of that
Right.
district?
Now, well, once again, I can clarify that. I can not say about setbacks from external property lines, to clarify it. And I can put that in there to help clarify that. Because you all are reading this as anyone else would read this. So if it's not 100% clear, let's make it as clear as possible.
Do that. Let's go ahead and do that.
yeah.
So I can change that to say setbacks from external property lines.
Do you have to have a motion to do that, or can we just do it?
Because I'm gonna bring this back to you.
I was gonna say, aren't we, we're in discussion, right, so we can just make changes as we go, since this is not a formal ordinance?
But since the intent portion could have been more conversational, I just wanted to I'm glad you all formalized that. But clarification of this, if you all are good with that, I can change that.
How long do you think it'll take to get some kind of guidance from the emergency services people about roads?
It's, so for subdivisions,
Talking about this,
right, so for subdivisions, we require a similar review process, and we're all linked into a unified system called Citizen Serve, and it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I get feedback from our fire marshal within, I'd say within 3 days.
okay, this is gonna be a 6-month process or something.
No, we have compared to even counties around us, we have a very quick turnaround time with our application and our revision process. This isn't meant to take a whole lot of time, it's just meant to say, here's a framework for it. And if I may address one thing that Mr. Markovich brought up, was regarding the subdivision standards. So subdivisions are, by the state definition, they're either subdivisions of land as we know it, but apartments, condos, and things like that can also classify as subdivisions. So looking at with our land development standards, if we're gonna have an RV that's bolted to the ground, that doesn't have tires on it, that's bolted, has all sorts of stuff built onto it, it's a house. It may be taxed as an RV, it may have a VIN number as an RV, it may be an RV, but it's not ready to travel. You're not gonna say, oh, there's a storm coming, oh, I wanna go to the national park with it, without doing major renovation to your house. It's a house. If it looks like a house and operates as a house and functions as a house, you can get full-time residency in an RV. I don't know why we wouldn't look at it as a house and hold it to the same standards as a house. From a land use, not a building codes perspective, but from a land use perspective, why we wouldn't look at it as a house. So if you were to put 11 houses on your property, we're gonna make you onto a county road, we're gonna make you do a traffic impact study. We're gonna make you have a 50-foot right of way, we're gonna make you have to have asphalt, we're gonna make you have a whole bunch of stuff. Why would you be able to do 10 houses that rolled in there and not look at them as a house? They're smaller, they usually hold less people, but from our code enforcement side, they don't always hold less people. A lot of times there's more people in there. And so that's why I have this as in the ready for travel section like that. And people brought up Foxwood Hills. To me, Foxwood Hills are a subdivided piece of land. Those are all individual parcels of land. Those are all little tiny lots. They're, 2,000 square foot lots.
Everybody good?
So this fellow's gonna contact you about his input from what he saw tonight, that RV park owner?
That's what we asked him to do.
Oh, there he is. Okay, I'm sorry. He's gonna contact you, and then you'll let us know what his input is, or
I can
whatever.
bring this back to you with certainly his input as well, and anyone else as well, not just not to single any one person out, but anyone's welcome to comment, but if you reach out to me regarding that, we can certainly incorporate that.
Any other questions? Well, we were not gonna do anything other than approve you to move forward, right? As a, this is a draft, so we've made some, suggestions and ideas. This is not informal ordinance wording.
Ordinance, no, this provides you all the framework. So you had a few options tonight. One is you can motion and vote for me to turn this as is into a ordinance and bring it back to you. We've had conversation though, where I'm gonna get with some members of the public and rework this. So I'll bring it back in, generally speaking, this format, I should say. And then we'll look at it again. If that's okay with it.
Is that right? Do you need a motion for us to ask you to move it forward? To move forward with
As discussed,
amending and then bringing it back to us, or no? We're good.
I'm fine with us, you putting it back on the agenda, and the instruction that I've got feels clear and fairly unified. So if anybody has an issue with that and wants to move forward with it, I would recommend that they bring it up at this point. If not, we'll just basically have something in a similar format to you in 2 weeks.
And if you know people who do RVs as a supplemental income for 2 or 3 people, talk to them. Share this, bring their input back, or share it with Mr. Chapman, even better, so that it's already on there paperwork-wise before we get back to the next meeting. And that way he can have it added, amended, whatever, and then we've got a solid thing to discuss without having a bunch of new stuff jumped in there. Yes, sir?
All right, you spoke with 2 or 3 people. As I read this, we're not even gonna look at anybody that has less than 4 units.
Correct.
It's up to 4. Is that not what it says?
No,
4 and above.
4 and above, okay.
from 4 to 10 is small, and above 10 is large.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's because of the discussion that you all had with previous to this. Now, if you all don't like that range, the reason I picked that range was because it tracks with our subdivision, our other ordinances with the number of units.
Well, I'm good with that like it's written, but she's speaking of 2 or 3 units, and
Or small scale, I believe is probably.
we're not looking at.
Not right, but I mean, in
less
other
than
words, I was
4.
just asking for people's input on these things
Yeah,
as far as
okay.
them managing their RVs anywhere.
Okay.
Because if they've got 2 or 3 now, they might have 6 or 7 the next time, if it keeps growing.
I've got a question about the roads. All-weather roads. Does a gravel road be considered all-weather?
I believe it is, and I would defer to emergency services, on that, and really that's the thing, I'm not trying to say you gotta have 3 inches of compacted gravel over gravel on a compacted base. If something has to get in and out, that's heavy equipment in and out from our emergency services, that's the intent of this. And they will, and if it's gravel, they'll say gravel.
I just don't want to force people like Benny there to put in asphalt roads.
I think we need to be clear on that. I don't think we need to hope that it doesn't say asphalt. I think we need to be clear that we're not requiring asphalt unless there's, I mean, for big, major, that maybe is one thing, which I've been to plenty of campgrounds that you just drive around on gravel the whole time.
I think the county, I think Highland Falls, Chapman has.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the all-weather road is a distinction that they use all-weather road, but they're in their fire manual, it says all-weather road. So it doesn't, I don't see, I mean, we could say, doesn't mean asphalt on it, or we can certainly
We don't want to rule out something that might.
play around.
Yeah, the better thing is just let them just define it, because they're gonna be the ones that approve a plan. Correct?
Yeah, now, if you all come up with something else, but I mean, all-weather roads, I mean, that could be gravel, it could be, any sort of crushed rock, I mean, as far as I've seen. I'll certainly ask Fire Marshal if he has any other suggestions, things like that, but it does not inherently mean asphalt.
Just ask them what their definition of all-weather road is.
All right, any other questions on the back, access? The only comment I would have here is the county, if you're coming off county road, a minor one gets permit from county roads and bridges, a major one gets traffic impact study and recommended improvements. My guess is that anybody that wants to build one is gonna start with a minor one and go to a major one later, so that they don't have to, do the traffic impact study. But that's okay. If that's how it turns out, I'm sure that Mr. Chapman or his office will get plenty of complaints if it becomes an issue. If somebody wants to build a major one and does the traffic impact study, then that's great. Any other comments or questions on this part? And the review process, you would say, comes through the planning department?
Yes.
Correct. Just that wording is in there so that they know where to come if this is in fact a guidebook.
Okay, under review process, you have an accounting of total acreage in the tract to be utilized and the number of proposed RV park spaces. We're not saying you can only have so many per acre or anything, right? Okay.
Any other questions? Are we ready to ask Mr. Chapman to bring this back to us in a newly and upgraded? All right, and ready to move on to commercial development standards? Thank you. All right, commercial development standards.
I mean, I believe somebody signed up to speak for the commercial development standards on one of those.
Maybe I didn't get that sheet?
I missed, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
But there is someone.
Okay. Will Hall, okay, Mr. Hall?
My name is Will Hall, and I live in Southport Village, which is a subdivision just outside the city limits of Seneca, just north on Highway 130. And I just want some general comments on commercial development, but allow me a brief moment on the background of growth. Do you know how many people were alive on this planet in the year 1 AD? 300 million. It took to the year 1800 before we hit our first billion. So depending on when you think man as we know him appeared on this earth, it's either been 10,000 or 200,000 years to hit 1 billion people. Now it's 12. 12 years to increase another billion. So what's happened? The world population's going up, the United States population's going up, South Carolina's population, Oconee County's population's going up. I listened to an expert on investing in real estate. And his little seminar, the first thing he says is, before you build or invest in real estate, you need to pick a state where the influx is greater than the outgoing population. You know where South Carolina rated? We're the highest influx of people, number 3. So South Carolina is going to grow faster than most other states. And I personally believe Oconee County is going to grow faster than most other counties in South Carolina. Because we are the Lake Mountain District, and both of those are very, very appealing qualities. So I think that planning has got some major challenges with infrastructure in the decades ahead. And I'm not gonna address any of those, but the one I do wanna talk about is with more people and more businesses coming into this area, there's gonna be more situations where commercial entities develop adjoining or abutting residential property. And that is always gonna be problematic for the residential property owner. Because when a business comes in without any restrictions, his property value is gonna go down quickly. He's gonna be exposed to noise, visual, and perhaps smell pollution. But there's also a vector for crime, because let's say, for example, you have a quarter or a third acre property along a state or county road, or you're in the perimeter, an outer perimeter of a community, and you have commercial property next to you, and a gas station, it could be any business, but a gas station or a Zippy Mart of some sort builds next to you. If there are no requirements for them, the crime vector is a car can pull up behind the building, not be seen from the street, and easily just rob or get into the property that abuts that commercial property. Or if he sees kids out there, he can easily kidnap one of those kids. And what if you had grandkids or children? What are they likely to see behind? They're going to see people urinating and see drug deals. It's a very, very bad situation. But there's an easy solution there, and you all control that. I'm not talking about zoning. It's going to happen. I mean, we just got to deal with these problems. More people cause more problems, and that's what we've got. But when they come in for a permit, you've got to ask them to provide a buffer to insulate that families or the residents that are impacted. And it could be when they're pushing dirt around, they push dirt and create a berm, and they put some kind of vegetation on top of that berm, maybe a fence. I'll leave it up to planning to decide. But somehow they have to insulate that family from the goings-on of that business. And lastly, I would like to remind you that every government entity, from the federal level to the state level to the city level to the county level, their first priority is the protection of its residents, including to promote the well-being of these residents. You have that power to institute some kind of policies to ensure that your residents are protected and also allow the businesses to run, but you've got to protect these people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Chapman, I will let you do an introduction of what we have here. It looks to me like it's an outline.
Sure.
Is that correct?
So what has come up in the past, and it was just timing worked out, is that we had spoke about a number of priorities back in January, a little much longer, for what we're doing, and commercial design standards or multifamily was part of that. It just so happened that when I put this on the agenda afterwards, Vivian and I had a conversation. We had a little community input meeting down in Southport, and then also the gun range issue popped up earlier yesterday. So it just kind of works out that it's coming here, is that commercial development standards, this would be more of a performance standard if you all wanted to. It's saying that if you're gonna put a non-residential something in, there are standards for that. So it's not saying that, you have a gas station, therefore you have to do this. It's a general, I thought that if we had some sort of regulation of non-residential next to residential, that it could be beneficial to the residents and probably the business at the end of the day. So what I've provided here is our non-residential subdivisions. I have issue trying to enforce be suitable, be adequate, maybe every effort shall be made. I have a lot of difficulty enforcing those terminologies. And it says the commission at the top, which I feel this was probably put in here earlier. So we have a few options. One is that every non-residential development comes before the planning commission. No one's jumping on that one? Okay. We have an option to put some sort of regulation on non-residential uses. We could utilize Appendix A as is, although I know Ms. Lyles, you're familiar with Appendix A. That's the same one that down in Fairplay that we looked at. It's quite involved.
It's too intrusive.
It's quite involved, that Appendix A. And I think it's probably suitable for certain city centers or certain areas, but broadly speaking, across the county, I myself wouldn't promote that, but I just wanted to put it out here. And the third option that I've come up with, and doesn't mean it's only three, it's just the third I've come up with, is that we keep our current standards in place.
And these are our current standards right here.
Yeah.
That non-residential
and generally
subdivision.
speaking, we don't really have any.
We don't have any, right.
So control-free districts, so for instance, I'll use the shooting range as an example, is that as of right, they're permitted to come in. It's unzoned, it's like unzoned, snap me for that. It's control-free district, it's no overlay, no lake overlay I-85. As of right, a shooting range is permitted anywhere in the county, 88% of the county, control-free district. And we don't have any regulations regarding buffers, areas next to it. So I imagine there's federal guidelines and state guidelines and NRA guidelines regarding shooting ranges, but from our perspective, we don't have anything. They can build it as close as those guidelines allow to property lines and what have you.
Can I make a comment?
Hang on. Well, if you don't mind, we've had a lot of comments and we really.
I mean, I'm not arguing, I just wanted to throw just something to think about, if that's possible. No?
If you don't mind, let's hang on and get some input here. And, yes, sir, Mr. Smith?
I'm gonna go ahead and say it. The population's increasing, there's no way getting around it in the county. We've got urban sprawl, there's no doubt about it. And these problems are continuing to increase. They're not gonna go away. And the overarching problem is the absence of reasonable zoning ordinance, period. I mean, that's the problem. Nobody wants to address it, but I'll say it. We don't have a reasonable zoning ordinance, period. And we're gonna continue to have these problems pressing up against residential areas.
Okay,
There's no such thing as reasonable zoning.
well, I don't want to go into this is not the time or place to be discussing zoning since it's already been done in the county and it is 88% control free. So, but I think that Mr. Hall, is that Mr. Hall? Made a good point in that as we get more and more crowded, we do need to find a way to mediate between the person who has a right to put his business on his property and the person who lives right next door to that property, who might be disturbed by a floodlight that shines in his bedroom window all night, every night long. Or, as we've recently seen, the kind of behavior directed within a community towards businesses that you would certainly not want near your home without some preventative something between you and the business. My personal opinion is that perhaps the best way to handle that then is to put in some standard that separates or protects the resident and the home from the commercial development. Without saying you can't build there, you can't do that there. Let's look at a way to provide for the business person to run his business and the homeowner to feel safe and secured and not invaded, if that's doable. I certainly understand Mr. Chapman's concern with suitable, adequate, maybe. That's the very thing that, as a school teacher, we were always told an objective must be measurable, or it's not an objective. So you tell a kid, I want you to make suitable progress toward reading. Well, suitable progress towards reading is way different for different people. So, is there a way, I'd like for the planning commission to come up with some kind of guideline, even if we have to hash it out for a couple of weeks, a couple of meetings, I'd like for us to come up with a guideline that will protect both the business owner and the property, the residential owner's rights to use their property.
You want us to pick between 1, 2, and 3, is that?
I think these are just suggestions. I think that option 1 lists some of the ways that we can go about setting standards. Is that correct, Mr. Chapman?
Yeah, and this really just, honestly, at the bare minimum, I don't see any of these being, so I put earth and swales there, and of these, that's probably the most onerous one. Moving dirt into a mound for any length of distance is expensive, but it's very effective for sound and perhaps for certain usage, yes. But generally speaking, a physical buffer, a boundary between a residential use and a non-residential use is not unheard of. It's very common throughout the country, throughout South Carolina. It's common, and there's a certain sense to that. I believe Mr. Hall did make a couple points there of things, traffic. I also think lighting, that's an easy one. If a car dealership comes next to you, your house is gonna be lit up by a car dealership. And I think having lighting and protecting our dark skies, protecting that also helps. And then just keeping solid waste, like keep your dumpsters away from your property lines. I mean, that just, no one of those three things sounds onerous. It sounds kind of like common sense, things that you would hope your neighbor would do anyhow.
Question. Who decides if it's a fence, a wall, vegetation, earth and swales, a row of trees?
We do. That's what I think that that's what I'm saying. We may have to fight this out. But vegetation did not mean a row of trees. Just as and this is why I said, if you don't mind sitting here just a half a second, physical buffers between adjacent non-residential and residential uses, obviously it would not be appropriate if someone owns 100 acres to tell them they have to run a solid board fence between them and the housing development next door. But if he already has 15 acres of trees between him and that residential property, he's covered. He does not then have to do anything else. Or if he wants to plant a series of trees that will grow to a certain size, and that's more pleasant to everybody because trees, might be something that everybody likes, then so it's up to us. And that, to me, I think it's time we take that responsibility because it's not gonna get any better, folks. Oconee County's growing and we're.
And are you saying that every commercial business that's not putting their business in a already determined commercial zone then has to come in front of us?
No, I'm saying we've got to decide what are his guidelines gonna be when they go to him.
Gosh, what if it's a tree farm business and now you've got a tree farm business? Now I've got to put a tree buffer in order for a tree farm business. I mean, I want to make sure that I want to make sure we don't make this so onerous. I mean,
that's right.
There is a responsibility that you're buying in a subdivision to know what your surroundings are.
An example of the non-resident.
Hold on just a moment. Mr. Smith made the comment that commercial is pushing in on residential, and I would say it's just the opposite, that our residential development, and I'm a residential developer, is pushing in on the openness of what's available out there to other people's private properties, and in our area, just happens to be considered control-free.
Yeah, I don't debate that, yes.
Urban sprawl.
Hold on a second.
A perfect example is what this first sentence in option 1. If you go to Westminster and look where the Dollar General is put, it's right in a residential, right beside a house. There's nothing. It's just a store, the parking lot, a downgrade going where the house is at. The lights are all there. There's no buffer of any kind in that area. Those people that live in that mobile home, I think it's a mobile home, there's always going to be lights there. during the day, during the night, because the parking lot's lit up to keep people from breaking in the Dollar General. So something there, I don't think the earth and swallows would have done good. Vegetation is not gonna do a whole lot. The only thing would do either a wall or some cypress trees or something. But I don't see how we can determine what they build. That should be left up to the developer that puts that business there with the discussion of the property owner next to him.
Well, they don't have to speak to the property owner next to them. In fact, this is just somebody who picked up the phone and called me, and I happened to, it was something I never thought about. So, they were concerned because they were told when they bought the property, 35 years ago, that the property adjacent to them would never be developed. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, my first instinct was, well, and you believe that? But then, on the other hand, I mean, I think about my mom, she would have believed that because people trusted people back in those days. And they believed that if they were dealing with a realtor, he would have told them the truth. And we can't forecast the future. So, again, I hate to say it, but folks, we're fixing to get to the not fun part of being on the planning commission. And that is the fact that our population is growing. And we are going to have to find a way to help people figure out how to get along with each other, allowing as much freedom as we can allow, but at the same time understanding that not everybody always does the right thing and that innocent person needs to be protected. Yes, sir?
I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that we may be going about this potentially in the wrong way. Two thoughts with that. One, the Dollar General in the house next door, I'd love to be the owner next door. I don't want him to put up a wall because I'm going to sell to Bojangles now and make a huge profit because if it's turned into a commercial area. So I would hate, I kind of hate for a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. The other part about that is in some cases, we take a different approach and say, the county is all on public records now. Anybody can look and see who their neighbor is and how their neighbor is zoned and what that zoning might allow for to determine whether they want to move there or not. It's not even necessarily up to their real estate agent anymore. It's all public record. And the more we enhance that public record, the more we put that on the consumer to make a wise decision based on all of the information now available. Nothing is hidden therefore.
But we're not always talking about people who are moving there. We might be talking about people that have lived there for generations that aren't making a choice of moving there. They are dealing with what is moving into their area.
No, I agree.
So
that with that part of what you were saying, I agree that other stuff is moving in and being sold. In some cases, again, it may be profitable for for the person who doesn't want to move, that they've lived there for generations and generations. Yes, looking at what's going there, but there's still that potential of, I'm now in an area that's becoming more commercial. I mean, we've seen that from the 40s and from the 30s and from the 20s and from the 70s or whatever year. There's always that urban sprawl, as Mr. Smith used. It grows
and do we
contracts.
want to continue to live with urban sprawl, or do we want to sit down and say, let's figure out a way to protect those people who live in an area?
But like he said, it's the subdivisions that are going out into the less populated areas and then growing up. And we're putting all the burden on our businesses. If the person doesn't like what moves in beside them, then they'll let them plant the trees. Why are we putting all of the burden onto the person that's coming in instead of personal responsibility? You don't like what's next to you, put some trees up. Don't look at it. Fences make good neighbors.
You ever bought a big enough, tall enough tree to make a difference between you and a Dollar General?
If I was there first, then I'll just plant trees if I don't like what's coming next to me.
That's not the way.
Well, all right, yeah, let's.
It's a discussion we definitely need to.
We definitely need to go further.
Don't need to address it.
Mr. Chapman, do you have a suggestion? Do we need to pick between option 1, 2, and 3, or make a further discussion, or?
So, a couple things. One is that one size fits all doesn't work. For instance, there's people with 89-acre tracts of land, and there's people with 1,000 square foot parcels they want to put something on. So we address that in our zoning ordinance control-free by having a sliding scale with setbacks. Under a quarter acre, quarter and a half and above. So we can certainly address that. Addressing Ms. Lyles, saying who's gonna decide what goes there, fence wall, vegetation, we can either look at it from if we wanna break it down into the corridors, if we wanna say around this, you gotta have a wall, this, you gotta have whatever it is, or we can put something a little less defined, but giving people enough wiggle room to pick what they want kind of thing. We could say you gotta provide a buffer, period. What does that mean? I don't love it. It may just be a step in the direction, say, okay, well, you gotta have something where, whatever that definition is. So, you all, to circle back, you all decided around January, this is, commercial building standards was a priority for the year. So, if you like, this is the option 3 is a do nothing approach. So I don't think that fits in to what you all decided in January. What I can do is I can do something similar to what I did with the RV ordinance, is I can bring it back to you and kind of break it down to bite-sized pieces and let you all choose that that's the way you wanna go, it's not the way you wanna go, and move on from there. Also bring in Appendix A, because maybe someone hasn't read it, and they'll love it. Or not.
I don't actually see anybody loving that one.
Right.
I'm familiar with Appendix A.
But just looking at buffers, lighting, and keeping solid waste recycling away from your neighbors, it doesn't seem overtly onerous. If 100-acre tract of land, tell people to put an earthen swale up, yeah, that's onerous, for sure. It's enough to drive people out of business, or not do business in the area. But, good fences make good neighbors. So.
All right, is everybody okay with that? That we asked Ms. Chapman to come back to us with a somewhat of an outline, using option 1 as a guide?
I'd like for us all to keep in mind that, didn't you say 88% of the county is control-free?
I think that's what.
That's 88% of the county has voted that they do not want government interference with their personal property rights.
Amen. Amen.
Now, are we gonna want the 12% to drive the county?
Because I don't know how many of you were here during
Right,
that
well, hold
time.
on,
I was
hold on.
here, and it was a fight, because we didn't want any of it. But we compromised and said, if everybody in that area wants zoning, then you can have your zoning, but leave the rest of us alone.
All right,
Yeah, but now we're starting to run up against problems because the county's growing. If you would have said, shut the gate, don't let anybody else in the county,
well, we can't, that's
Well-
water under the dam, so we can't make any changes.
This 88% has had the opportunity to join the zoning program and has not.
We're not gonna do it.
well, now the program is extremely difficult.
All right, are we okay with asking him to at least come back with a possibility of doing some kind of commercial development standards? So that, this is something that we at least have guidelines
I
to
ain't
go with?
promising anything, but we'll look at it.
No, that's fine, we're not,
That's good enough.
all right. And we removed doing old business from the agenda, so we do not need to discuss it, I would assume, since we've had, commission comments, and nothing else needs to be brought up as an action item. So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.